Hey everybody, thanks for joining the Curious is Better podcast. I'm Craig Lamb with Envative, and today we have Scott Hopkins from Farmington Foods. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having.
Hey Scott, let's just jump right into. Why don't you tell us about Farmington Foods and your role and how you got?
Yeah, I currently work for, and I just started with them as of last November. And Farmington Foods is one of the last family-owned pork manufacturers in the city of Chicago. They've been there 60 plus years, and they've seen the industry grow and ebb and flow all over the place. And they currently were looking for someone to help them with the food service side of their industry. They did a really good job here in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years in retail, to where they're in places like Costco, Sam's, Walmart, Meijer, things like that. Aldi, my wife loves that. Sees our product in Aldi. They what they haven't been really strong in is in the food service sector. Primarily, with just big broadline distribution, restaurants, hotels, chains, all that stuff. And so they hired me on to be the director of food service for North America, to go around and do exactly that. So my role really right now is talking with end users, distribution, regional distribution, chains, national accounts, all that stuff right now, trying to source and find out what our sweet spot is as a company. We're not a huge company. There are other obviously larger, like Hormel, Tyson, companies like that that distribute to everywhere all the time and everybody, which I would tell you, I kind of like our position. We're kind of a smaller guy, but we get to pick and choose who we get to deal with. And we've got a quality product, and it's something we're very proud of. And so it's something that's easy to stand behind and go to market with, because we're not the mass producers. So that's
That's
kind of our niche and our little sales pitch, for
but
where
you
we
but you
stand.
have an interesting background, right? You came from a much larger company and you were using a lot of technologies and some good, some bad,
Oh, geez.
in
Yes,
helping with the
yes.
automations and stuff. But and then now you're kind of tasked to figure out what's the best of breed to bring it into where you are today. So can you talk about some of the gaps that are in that industry and what you've seen and what you're working on?
Sure. Well, I mean, so if we back up a little bit, so prior to this, I was with Performance Food Group for 15 plus years. And I've always been in the marketing role, kind of business development role for them throughout that entire time frame, and multiple different levels. I was a district sales manager and so on and so forth, and for them on and off in areas. When I started with them, PFG obviously was a lot smaller. And my operating company, we call them opcos. If I slip into that terminology, you know what I'm talking about. Our opco here in the Midwest was about 350 million a year, in sales. And currently, right now, it's over five. So they've done tremendous in a growing procedure. But back then, they allowed each of the independent operating companies to kind of do things on their own. So we got to engage in technology and things back then on in fronts that no one else were doing at that time.
Could you
Now
be a
we
little bit
spring
more
ahead to where we
daring
are right
too?
now. The what?
So they could be a little bit more daring because they
Yeah,
could.
he'd be a little more daring. I mean, back then, so it was funny. I came on board, and one of the first things that we did, one of the first things that I did is I saw they had Performance already had this at the location I was at. They had an individual that was doing custom menus for end users for restaurants. And the thought process was, hey, we have this menu. If I have your menu from an end user, and if I do it for you in a professional way, because most restaurant independents don't have that access, or they do it really poorly, then I'm providing a service. Now, if I provide this service and doing this for it, it makes the distributor a little more sticky. We like to call it.
Sure.
You're less likely to leave me. I'm doing your menus. Why would you leave me
It's a
because of the
nice to
price of
have. It's got
tomatoes?
real claws.
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, the problem with that at the time is that the designer was in, Rock Island, Illinois, and we were distributing around the 5 state regions around the Midwest. And unless you live right by Rock Island, Illinois, or we're going to drive into town to sit down and talk with her, you couldn't really engage in that service. And we had 100 plus sales reps. We have 5 states. We have 4,000 customers around the area. There's so much more we could do. So immediately we changed the platforms we were on, and that software wise, and we just jumped into InDesign and used Apple Macintosh computers because that's what designers use. So we just, whatever the design is, where you went. Um, and then we engaged, and it wasn't my idea. I had somebody to help me with this, so I have to give credit where credit's due, to a company called Basecamp. And Basecamp, which is a project management software system. But and I guess Time Magazine and some of these other periodical magazines use it for what they do. We used very limited pieces of it, but what it allowed me to do was put designers in my office, here, they're in Rock Island, and I could talk to anybody in any market anywhere and send design PDFs and everything up and down, back and forth, and the communique and everything all happened very quickly, and all, everything that went back and forth from the customer to my designer was copied to my sales rep, to my DSMs, to whoever wanted a copy could see it all go on. Anybody could weigh in. It was all documented. Everything was right there. And so immediately it took that, what a great little thing we've straw on the cap, that the feather we had, allowed us to then roll that out to almost every account. And then it rolled out that it was so good that we moved it to other operating companies around the country. Like, for a while there, I was doing menus for 5 other locations around the country, in St. Louis and Richmond and
What was
everywhere.
the time? What was the era? What year was that?
So let's see, that would have been 2010, 2012 is when we probably really got into doing it for other operating companies
Yeah,
around
because
the
like
area.
now everything's ubiquitous, right? But
Oh
then,
yeah, I mean now,
but
you're
then,
like, wait, menus? Yeah.
yeah, but then it was
But
like
then,
we figured out a way to reach way beyond those geographic limitations. That's awesome.
yeah, and
When
it was all done through Basecamp. I mean, which was really, and then now at the time, and so then all of a sudden, my company, the president at the time, allowed me to, resource wise, I had 3 designers, which was unheard of for a distribution company. I had a full-fledged marketing department, 3 designers. I'd engaged with 5 different printing companies in my backyard because they all did different nuances to what you were designing, how you were moving it forward. But then what that allowed me to do is that allowed me to have, so I had all this great design, great equipment. So now my internal marketing going out to customers, my internal marketing to my sales force, my internal marketing to what we did around the building, all of a sudden was just better for everything and everyone, type of thing.
That's awesome.
So it was kind
What
of cool.
what are, like, to fast forward? What are some of the challenges that Farmington Foods is facing that you think you could
Yeah.
cut
So,
down?
that was great back. And again, that's PFG. And then again, and you could see the growth from that company and the things that it went through and everything. So I then fast forward to Farmington. Farmington is still, the company I work for, so I gotta be careful how I say this. So Farmington is still a little back in the dark ages. Whereas, PFG, yeah, I mean, we don't have, we don't have a CRM. We don't have anything like that really in place. And they're perfectly okay with it. And it's kind of an extreme on both ends. PFG was really pressing, they needed to get technology, need to have it, and they're getting all the reports and all the data and all the stuff that was coming through and all that. So I know what that world is like. And I've come to this other side where I have nothing. Now, in my opinion, I think that there is a happy medium in between, because a lot of what I run into, and I was just at a food show in Fort Lauderdale this week. I just flew back yesterday, talking to a lot of other manufacturers about this very same thing, and that is, a lot of manufacturing has gotten into all these CRMs and all these accounting pieces and all these data mining processes. And unfortunately, when some of that gets just used because, hey, that sounds great, we can make money, into an accountant type format, from a sales format, it just does not really work out from a workflow. So you end up having your sales force spend more time databasing, inputting information into these things, than actually going out and doing what they should be doing. And
Yeah,
then when they start putting in, we ran into this at PFG, and I always push back on this. When you start putting quotas on it, I think that's where the rub really changes. Because if you turn around and say, okay, if I have, like in my world right now as a manufacturer, if I look to a Salesforce person and I say, I need you to give me 5 hot leads every week, you should be able to find 5 hot leads every week. That's your job. Go out, find me 5 hot leads, right? Well, if that's the quota, then sure enough, that salesperson, depending on how I manage them, is going to turn around and give me 5 leads. Whether they're hot, whether they're legit, whether they're accurate, remains to be seen. Whether I follow up on that and that person figures out that I don't, and they just push it through because it's just, checking a box and moving through. That's the problem with the industry right now. Because as I look across all the other manufacturers and all the other brokers that are out there, that's the quagmire they're in. The
Yeah,
biggest problem I see. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say that your story is like really reflective of a lot of the conversations I've had where the food and beverage clients that we have, there hasn't been a lot of attention in that forward facing technology. You know where our projects have been on the manufacturing line, right? We've done IoT and predictive maintenance analysis because stopping the production is paramount, right? So we've written systems that it'll measure a lot of biologics, heat or pressure, when the machine's running at that cadence and all this stuff. And they put a lot of money and attention into that technology. But it's interesting to me because, again, your story is very similar. Is that the other side of it? When you talk about CR or like the I don't know, operational innovation is like, well, no, we need that. We can survive without that because it's kind of a glad-handed type of industry still, right? Like you pick
Very
up
much.
the phone and you're like,
Very much. And so what they were trying, I mean, I get, and again, I understand the process. So manufacturers want to know, hey, what does my future look like? So if I know that I have certain hot leads, and if my sales force can put those hot leads into a system and say, okay, these leads represent X number of cases, I can then project out what my quarter is going to look like this next quarter and so on and so forth down the line. I could project out production. I could project out all that. So on paper, that is money. You know what I mean? So I get the reason why it exists and why there's so many out there doing what they're doing on that front. Um, the problem has been is that they put all their money on this and that's it. And then they started putting into these quotas and things that start getting into this stuff. And this was happening with the brokerage groups around the country 10, 15 years ago as well, where everyone was talking, how many customers did you see? How many, same type of thing. And so the fact that not one manufacturer, if you were a broker group representing a bunch of manufacturers, your manufacturers were all asking the broker sales force, who did you see? What did you see? How did you see them? How many cases you dropped off? All this stuff. They wanted all that information. So you spent, your entire Thursday, Friday afternoon filling out all these forms, doing all that stuff because you had these quotas to make, right? Down the line. And you sent all that information off. And do you know what everybody did with that information?
nothing.
Nada. To this day, most companies still to this day, nada. And so what you ended up, and the brokers figured this out, the salespeople figured this out. I want my boss off my back, so I just do the quota and off it goes. That's not helping the system because it's that it's the computer thing, you input shit, output shit, right? So you make sure what you put is worth what you want to get out. And
So
so
how does someone in your role push for innovations that you see? So like that's I think it's a very consistent and glaring hole, right? As
it
far as
is,
like the tech.
it is.
But like if you wanted to be an advocate, like how do you do it in that industry when there's such a kind of a
And I think that's the $1 million question. Quota objective of just doing that, from sale, and I see it happen in all companies, including PFG. Just throw quotas out there and say everybody's got to do X is a mistake because that's what starts it. There has to be more to it than that. There has to be more to it than just a quota. Look, in the end, all we're looking to make sure is we're trying to make sure that our sales forces are out there doing what they're doing, the jobs that we ask them to do. And we're asking them to give back the information that what they're doing and going on. It's not that I don't trust my staff. I don't trust my people. This is how the business today operates. It's very easy to tell where people drive and go to, and I can geolocate everything if you really need to. Nobody wants to go down that road, right? But there has to be a kind of a give and take that, look, every week is not going to be 5 hot leads. This week could be 3. Next week could be 10, type of
yeah.
thing.
And what if
It's
the three based on some like really good analysis,
yeah,
like you have a close rate of 75% on three
yeah,
versus you have a close rate of 30% on five.
very, very true. And
And
so that's some of the thing I think from a management, a leadership style, that just throwing a number out there doesn't get you what you need.
is this some of the stuff that
And
you're trying to get into the
yeah, And let's face it, it's the age old statement I've heard all my career. You inspect what you expect, because if you don't, you don't get it. So many times they throw those quotas and no one checks up on it. No one checks that those quotes are legit, real, and so on and so forth. They just, that, and there I think is the other problem, that we get into, is that, I want the information that's coming. If I'm going to do it that way, I need information that's coming that's legit.
Have you begun any exploration in some technologies that can help with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I started looking around like Salesforce and some other groups that have some pretty robust pieces out there. We're
Uh,
still a small enough company. I need to find something that's a little more unique for what we're doing. And again, I'm building a Salesforce, so I'm trying to start that process. So I don't need something really robust and off the blocks right now. In fact, that would probably send most of the people in my company's head spinning with some of that stuff. But I do acknowledge uh, the incredible timeliness of being able to get data and information back. I mean, I saw it with PFG. I mean, at any point in time at PFG, I could query, if you were a manufacturer coming in. So here's a great one we used to use all the time. So if I was a rubber glove manufacturer, and you're like, okay, how do I increase sales in rubber gloves, right? Well, the rubber gloves, it's not a very sexy thing, but the rubber gloves, people use them, whatever. Right. Well, we had a system that you could query. This was a company I actually helped work with back in the day called Meal Ticket. That's really big right now, and they own Market Man, which love both those companies. You could query in our system rubber gloves. Who's buying rubber gloves currently right now? All of our active accounts, and then is also buying raw chicken. All right. And then I would go through this whole thing saying, okay, everybody buying raw chicken that's not buying rubber gloves. Then it's
yep,
like, okay, there you go. So we have an opportunity.
that's
So
right.
you're buying raw chicken. I know you have to be using rubber gloves for sanitary practice, but you're not buying it from us. So you got to be buying it from somebody else. I'm just hoping you're buying them. I don't care as long as you're buying them, right? Exactly. So you kind of get what I'm saying. So
I
it has
totally
these
do.
great mining there's things that you could pull together, and you can make all this great, I could get where I could be selling pasta, but not selling pasta sauce. I could do all these wonderful things too down that road, that allowed me to really go after, and these are just mining your active accounts, which was, invaluable
Yeah,
information.
so it's
Low
got to be
hanging fruit.
exciting and daunting though at the same time, right? Because
It is.
when Farmington's like kind of behind the technology curve, but they're small, they're nimble, they're anxious, they're
Oh my God, yes.
enthusiastic, all those great things. But then you're just like, I have to introduce this, but I have to introduce it at a cadence that's not going to make people want
Yes.
to jump out a window. And it
Correct.
also
Yeah.
has to, every one of them has to produce value, right? Everything you introduce has to produce value, because if you make one mistake, they'll be like, oh, another thing out of Scott's office. It's like, we're not going
Right.
to.
So I really have yet to really, again, I'm still, again, November, so I'm kind of 6 months in. So I'm I'm doing this I got my first year to try to, figure the lay of the land, and kind of figure this out. I told myself I was going to be a little bit slower than I've been. I've been a little more forward on some stuff that I kept saying, I was going to hold, but yeah, it's just the way I am. But I mean, but yeah, I'm still assessing where we're at. I can see there's so much technology out there, and there's so many things that can help us move forward. But again, I need to find the right fit for us. We're not going to be able to afford to put on like Salesforce to come in and help
But
us
yeah,
build a sales
no.
program.
Well,
It's just
and
not going to
again,
happen.
I can tell you, like,
Yeah.
we did a project for a company that was in Washington State that they do, fruit production. The margins are fractions
Yes.
of a penny, right? So they have to make sure that anything that they introduce is unbelievably valuable. One of the
Right.
biggest things they were wasting money on was that. Uh, so, say a restaurant wants to order a pallet, but they're not going to order a whole pallet of apples. They're going to get 2 crates of apples, some pears, whatever their offerings are, some cherries.
Exactly. Oranges, bananas, and build out the palette. Yeah.
So the money that they were spending in reconfiguring pallets for their, I'll call it like a couple hundred miles was the halo of their local distribution, was causing so much disruption to their, putting it onto the 18 wheelers, like the over the when they're shipping out of their region. What we did was we put a reader on the fork truck, and we could RFID tag every pallet or every crate. So it's like you have on this on this pallet is boom, 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 boom. No one had to even look, and it took it right out of
And
inventory.
so to go back to PFG a little bit, so they would actually have it to where those selectors and pickers, I mean, they wanted to make sure that you stack the pallet right, because the other problem you end up having was in shipping is how the pallets are stacked. And in the food world, you get some cases that are really flimsy and some cases that are really, really heavy. And then you got problems with cross contamination. Like I can't put raw meat above vegetables. And then the one item that every distributor hates to transport is sacks of flour. So if you throw sacks of flour on a pallet, the chances that someone's going to nick an edge or a corner and have it fill out, and you're going to leave it, trail of flour on your truck, a trail of flour on your customer, a trail of flour across your dock. And so you talk to any distributor, they're going to tell you they hate flour, but it's just a necessary evil for what they do. And they're trying to build those pallets out. And then they even have these automated shrink wrappers that wrap those things for you. So you build the pallet out, throw it in, and it goes zip, and off it goes in. They'll tell you how to load the truck to make it balanced right, how to get the, because again, these trucks are freezer refrigerated, dry goods, and you have to put everything in on based on stops. I mean, so the algorithm is pretty intense.
Yeah,
The people that pull that together at the transportation department at PFG, I got to tell you, and it's not just PFG because every US and CISC, they all do it. That stuff's insane. I mean, trying to figure that one out, that's a
it's
really
impressive
intense
math
job.
because again, and they don't even want returns to be empty on those
No,
miles.
right.
So yeah, so that's it,
No,
it,
the logistics on that end, they've really got a lot of stuff going on, especially on that front. You know,
it, let me ask you as we're wrapping up too, is there anything that you've seen in particular that excites you about like some tech that's coming your way into the food
yeah.
manufacturing?
From a manufacturing side, um, well, since I'm kind of new to manufacturing because I left distribution, so I was just at the NRA in Chicago. I usually go every year, and I like going to the NRA because when I was at PFG, it was definitely talking to end users, restaurants. And what I'd spent a lot of time is in that technology area, which is now almost an entire section of their entire exhibit floor. It used to be this little bitty place where a couple POS systems and things like that.
Yeah,
And now everybody's got a POS system. Everybody's got a cloud-based system. Everybody's got a gadget, a unique thing, something to pour your alcohol, turn your fans on, count your liquor, count your food, count your cost save this, cost save that. It's insane. And that's not a good thing because that's back to some of what I used to talk about with having you know, the end user is in this fatigue where they almost are paralyzed by a decision because there's so many options. So if you just go online and just say, hey, I want to find what's the best restaurant POS system, there's going to be 20 plus options out there. And there's going to be dozens of sites to tell you which is the best, which is whatever. So how's an independent that all they want to do is sell hamburgers, out of a little small shop, supposed to figure that out? Now, from my standpoint, I will tell you it is you need to have something in your business accounting for stuff for your stuff that you're doing. Doing the cash in the cigar box underneath the register is not the way to do business these days, type of thing. Especially, so I mean, the analytics you get out of that are so great, but how do you navigate that? So we would spend a lot of time there doing exactly that so we can help our customers understand that. So people like yourself who understands and hear people talk about stuff and get introduced to things like that, you're looking for people like you to say, hey, tell me what's out there and what works. Right
yeah,
now, for me, I'm modeling other companies that are like us, and I'm seeing how they're doing, what they're doing, and way they're doing it. I know what I left at PFG, and I know the direction they're going. And again, they're a skyrocket, so they're doing what they're doing. We're not there, so I need to find an abridged version that fits us and then fits my style in the direction that I see us wanting to go. So I spend a lot of time talking to other people about, well, what are you using? What do you like? What don't you like? What's
there's
good?
something
What's
weird
not?
about that, right? Is like the community of it. It's like
Oh my
if
God,
you hear from somebody, it's like, well, we did this and it worked out well. You feel a little bit better about your decisions because
yeah,
I always tell people it's like, well, if you're not an engineer or you're not a technologist per se, but you're in operations and it's highly visible, the last thing you want to do is make a technical leap where they go, "What were you
yes,
making that decision for anyway? You're in operations, or you're in marketing, or you're in sales management." It's like, yeah, but the technologies infiltrate every department. how do I get educated to make these decisions? And you're right. A lot of them reach out to companies like ours and say, what do you see? But whether they work with us or don't, it's just to get the conversation going, to do a little bit of research to figure out, what my options are.
What's exciting is that innovation is so quick and so fast now that just going to the NRA and you've seen the things that they're doing at the NRA, I was like, wait, what? I mean, this last time I was there, and these little robots running around trying to serve people. Now, I am not a fan of that. I get it, I understand it, but I mean, because especially the industry's strapped now with labor and things like that. So automation is going to be huge for the industry moving forward. So you're watching companies invest in machines that can do the fries each time. They don't have to have everybody stand over a fryer. It's the same fry every time. We got people doing burgers. They can do an automated burger, which I thought was insane. But I mean, it's really cool to see the technology and the things that they're getting into that were really, I mean, that are really making things happen for us. I will tell you, back in the day, so in 2000, it was one of the last restaurants I opened called Biaggi's, and we were an all scratch a la minute kitchen. All right. I wouldn't have looked at anything pre done, value added. I would have told you to go pound salt. I would have told you, get the hell out of my place. That's not what we're doing,
Mhm.
type of thing. And we had true chefs and all that stuff. But today, it's not that way anymore. It just is totally not that way. You can't afford to run a scratch kitchen in today's market outside of an urban market. Really, outside of an urban
Yeah.
market, it's really hard
The
to
New
do.
Yorks and Chicagos and stuff.
Yeah, you don't have the skill, the labor, the access, the employee base, all the things that go into it. So the great thing is that technology and manufacturing has caught up with stuff like that. So even in Farmington Foods right now, I have a whole value added line that I'm rolling out for restaurants that's all about labor saving pieces. So don't buy a smoker and fuss over it for 10 hours a day, deal with the soot and the smoke and the bugs and stuff with the wood, all the crap that comes out of it and all the shelving all the things you got to do. I'll do it for you. I'll send it to you as a quality product. You put your spice, you put your sauce on it, you go to market, there you go. I can get you into the barbecue market or into the pork market any way you want, with these value added programs that I've got working on right now. And I would have never looked at that stuff before, but now tasting how these products are coming out, you can't tell. You really cannot tell the difference whether I did it in my restaurant or not, type of thing. And that's where technology has really helped the industry that I'm in really move forward. I mean, we're right now R&Ding for Buc-ee's out of Texas, and they're Texas based, so they like a lot of smoke in they like a lot of smoke in their meat, obviously. So we're in the midst of putting on a brand new log smoker onto our smokehouse to be able to inject more natural smoke into our flavor of our meat. So when we do things like that, yeah, we can do things for them that way. But then inadvertently, it's not just them; we can do it for anybody, type of thing. So it really gives us a lot of different ways of putting our products out there the way we want.
Scott, this was fun, man. You have a lot of information.
Yeah,
I
a lot
really,
going on.
really appreciate it. So listen, look for this podcast on our YouTube channel, Spotify, and on LinkedIn. And I want to thank again Scott Hopkins for joining today. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate it very much.